over 300 missiles and drones, most of which, thankfully, were intercepted. Joining me now to break it down in studio is Lisa Daftari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk. And joining us from Washington, D.C. is Jonathan Schanzer, Senior Vice President of Research at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, Lisa, welcome. Great to have you with us. And Lisa, I'll start with you. What do you think? We had this delay now for about 2 weeks. What do you think the Iranian regime's calculus is right now? Tough to get inside their evil heads, I know.
Yes.
But how do you think they're seeing this? And it seems that this is inevitable, this Iranian attack.
Right. So they find themselves actually in a very difficult position because on the one hand, they have to retaliate, right? Because they were humiliated and this is who they are, right? A lot of chest thumping and they have to get out there and they have to retaliate. Sure. On the other hand, they don't want an escalation. And I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but hear me out on this. Sure. They do not want an escalation. They do not want the Islamic Republic or Iranian soil to get involved in this larger escalation. That is why this regime has created its proxies. From day one, they came in 1979. They created their proxies to do their dirty work for them in the region. They're the ones who are supposed to carry out these wars. They're the ones who are supposed to deter. They're the ones who are supposed to push forward this Islamic Shiite agenda of the Islamic regime. So the psychological warfare that they have created, they have shut down the economy, they have shut down tourism. The fact that Israelis, they can't, I've talked to so many Israelis who say, even when we take showers, we're so worried, we're so quick because we might hear the sirens go off and we have to get to the bomb shelters. So they've created a situation where they have instilled fear. They know it's coming, but they don't know when it's coming. A lot of people predicted that it would be today because of Tisha B'Av, which is a historical day for a day of mourning for the Jewish people. But, you know, it's inevitable. They have to do something. So in this case, will it be worse than the April attacks? Well, if it's coming from Hezbollah, they have a better reach. They have better aim. They're well endowed. They have a lot of weapons, 150,000 short, middle, long-range missiles, drones, fighters. So I think that Lebanon has been preparing for this. Israel obviously knows that it's coming, and it's something that is inevitable, as you said.
Yeah, and Lisa, you've got great sources on the ground in Iran who you're talking to on a regular basis, and you make a great point about Hezbollah, obviously perched on Israel's northern border with a massive rocket and missile arsenal of its own. Jonathan Schanzer in D.C., I posed a question in the intro, John. Look, Israel has known now for roughly 2 weeks that this is coming in some form or fashion. Eventually, why would Israel not strike preemptively since this is the case? They're sitting there waiting. As Lisa said, there's psychological terror right now among some in the Israeli public that the Iranian regime has created. Why not strike preemptively? And is the main reason for that the Biden administration tying Israel's hands?
Yes, that is the answer, Eric. And it's unfortunate because what the administration has done is they've surged, they've put assets in the region, and I think that's a good thing, right? I mean, they're trying to stare down the Iranians, they're trying to scare them, but the Iranians don't appear terribly scared. The U.S. has also expedited some weapons to Israel, which are long overdue. These were weapons that the administration had slowed when the Israelis requested it as it related to the Hamas front in the Gaza Strip. But now that there's a potential war with Lebanon or with Iran or with some of these other proxies in perhaps, you know, Iraq or Syria or Yemen, the Israelis need additional weaponry. The U.S. is providing it. But what we're hearing is, despite all of that, first of all, the Iranians don't appear to be deterred. And then beyond that, what we're also hearing is that the U.S. is telling Israel that they cannot fire first, that they need to find out what gets hit, how much gets through, how much damage is done, and then based on that, the Israelis will be able to prepare their strike packages. And I don't think that is scaring the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic is looking at this and saying, here we go. We continue to fight Israel with one hand tied behind its back, and it's actually the United States that's tying that hand behind the back of the Israelis. So they're pretty pleased with what they see right now. But I also will just note that Lisa's 100% right. If the Islamic Republic chooses not to fight, they have Hezbollah, they'll be able to do it, and the Israelis will have their hands full. Precision-guided munitions, long-range, short-range, thousands of rockets a day. And so this is in Iran's hip pocket right now. They've got a backup plan, which can be as disastrous for Israel as potentially a bunch of strikes out of Iran. In fact, it could be even more deadly because of that short range that you guys mentioned.
John, about 20 seconds before the break, then you guys will be right back. Does Iran even dare to do this pending attack, if there was perhaps a more meaningful response to that April 13th attack? Was Iran not deterred in the wake of that first go-round back in April?
They were not deterred. All we saw was missile defense, and missile defense is not going to create deterrence. It just means that Iran's not going to be successful in getting 100% of its rockets through. They got about 8 rockets out of those 400 that got through, but that did not give them a sense that they would pay a price. And that's the biggest problem that we're dealing with right now. Deterrence has not yet been established.
Yeah, the regime is emboldened. We'll break that much more after the break on that and the U.S. role in all of this with Lisa Daftari, Jonathan Schanzer, an all-star Israel panel. Don't move. Welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. We're talking to our all-star Middle East panel, Lisa Daftari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, and Jonathan Schanzer of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Lisa, right now with the Iranian regime, it seems like, as we were talking about before the break, they're emboldened. The U.S. is the strongest power in the world. Israel has a formidable military prowess as well and capabilities. Then how is Iran still emboldened?
Because they got the message from the White House 2009 that the White House or the Obama administration back then, now the Biden administration, would never get in their way. Let's go back to the Obama administration. He campaigned on normalizing the relations with Iran's regime without any contingencies, without any conditions. They didn't even talk about proper behavior or any of that. They let the people of Iran down. They're the ones, the majority of 85 million people who went out into the streets and said, we want better, we want a different regime. And the Obama administration turned the other way because they were set on normalizing relations with the mullahs. Fast forward to Biden's administration, again, while he was campaigning, he said, I'm going to get back into the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Again, no contingencies, no conditions. His goal was to, again, normalize relations with Iran's regime. And the U.S. position for the last 4 years has been exactly that, which is why they have been able to sell oil above $100 billion. They have been able to beef up their proxies. The reason why October 7th happened is because of the positioning that we have in the White House right now. And the people of Iran are siding with Israel. A majority of people are coming out and saying, good job, Israel, for curbing their proxies, for curbing the regime inside Iran. Microsoft actually came out with a report this week. We covered this on the Foreign Desk that said the Iran regime is meddling in U.S. elections. Why would they meddle? Because, of course, they don't want Trump back in office. Those 4 years were the only years that they were being contained, where Hezbollah had charity boxes in Lebanese supermarkets because they were suffering. The Iran regime was not able to pour that money because they were being sanctioned in important and significant ways. So, there's a reason why we say foreign policy matters. It trickles down into our national security. It trickles down into our assets, into the regional assets, into our ally Israel's security as well. So the posturing and positioning of the White House has given the Iran regime the green light.
Lisa, great points all around. You make a great point, too. Crucial distinction between the Iranian people and the Iranian regime.
Absolutely.
The people, the main victims. You have great contacts on the ground in Iran. Again, you're talking to Iranian dissidents on a regular basis. They're the main victims here. And, John, what do you think? Look, President Trump, a new sheriff in town in November when it comes to America's enemies. Would that be the case? I think of Iran, China, Russia, North Korea, kind of a gathering storm against the United States right now. Is Iran not in favor, shall we say, of another Trump administration? Does that make things more difficult for the Iranian regime and its regional and global goals?
That was certainly the case during the previous Trump administration. We know that for sure, that maximum pressure from the Trump administration put Iran in a bind. They were running out of cash reserves. They had less room to maneuver. Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC Quds Force, was killed during Trump's time in office, and they still remember that with a great deal of anger and perhaps a bit of fear as well. So all of that, I think, is good. But what we have is still, I think, a lot of unknowns, because we just don't know whether the Trump administration would try to, for example, broker a deal that would end all of this, or whether this would lead to maybe heightened conflict across the region. A lot of unknowns going into this, but certainly I think the Iranians believe that they have 6 months from now until January, give or take, to make a mess out of the Middle East. They're feeling very confident that the Biden administration is predictable and rather weak, and that's exactly how they're operating right now.
Yeah, John, a great point. Do you get the sense that the next 6 months, wow, very dangerous window here? I mean, Joe Biden's laying on the beach in Delaware over the weekend. Other than that, we haven't seen very much from him. We've got an election coming up in November. This seems, I'm sad to say, like a prime time for America's enemies, Iran chief among them, to strike and stir up chaos around the world.
Yeah, we definitely get that sense. And look, the Biden administration has been conveying a sense of concern and fear from the beginning of this conflict, right? What they've been trying to do is to limit Israel's ability to maneuver. They've told Israel not to respond with overwhelming force, not against Hezbollah, not even against Hamas, which is where initially the Biden administration gave the Israelis a green light. They don't want to see the Israelis attack Iran. All of this, I think, is now reinforced by Kamala Harris's rise to the candidate. She, at this point, is also echoing what Biden has been saying all along. I think the Iranians see her relative lack of experience in foreign policy and military affairs as a net benefit for them. Yeah. They really look at this as an opportunity. And I will also just say that the Iranians are fighting this war on their terms. They are fighting a war of attrition against Israel right now, won by proxy. So that means that they can continue to attack Israel from multiple vectors, multiple proxies. They can do it on the cheap. They're losing Arab allies. They're not losing even one drop of Iranian blood while they do this. And they don't fear a reprisal from the U.S., and they know that the Israelis are constrained. So they are loving this 6-month window right now. You can tell they're quite pleased, and it's quite frankly why they haven't stopped despite all of the assets and all of the threats that the U.S. has deployed over the last week or two since the assassination of Fuad Shukr and Ismail Haniyeh.
Dangerous times, and we will break it down more after the break with Jonathan Schanzer from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Lisa Daftari from the Foreign Desk. Do not move, much more to come. Welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. We're talking to our all-star Middle East Israel panel, Lisa Daftari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, and Jonathan Schanzer of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Lisa, I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to come back to that Iranian ring of fire and the looming, perhaps, war in the Middle East. But real quick, during the break, you made a great point, a reminder, school is nearly back in session. And before school at obviously in the spring, we saw these massive pro-Hamas protests on U.S. college campuses across the United States. What's the latest on that? And is there an Iranian regime hand in those protests on American college campuses?
All right. So since May, when school let out, there have been two developments on that front. A handful of cases of litigation that's going on in terms of holding the students to account and holding the schools to account. Some heads are rolling so that this doesn't continue to happen. By the same token, we're also seeing that there is a bigger effort to keep the momentum going. We covered at the Foreign Desk that there is obviously now evidence that Iran's regime is funding and organizing the encampments, the protests that are going on campus. And until, till the day that there will be these useful idiots, the regime in Iran will take advantage of them. How ironic that they do not let their own college students even say one bad word against the regime, but yet they're using our college students to do, again, their dirty work. They're finding proxies here on U.S. campuses. But, I've always said this, and I'll say it one more time because it's worth mentioning. The war in the Middle East, the military war, will eventually come to an end, and it will come to an end soon. But what we see here, this information war, where the legacy media is fawning over the death of Haniyeh, where you have college students, college professors, these NGOs, these nonprofit organizations that are fawning over Hezbollah and Hamas and terrorists, when you have college students wearing Hezbollah and Hamas gear and protesting
in America.
In America, when you have fringe groups like different organizations, when you have minority groups like women's groups and gay rights groups that are protesting for Hamas, when their heads would be chopped off if they were in the region, we have a problem here. And this war, this information war, will carry on much longer.
Yeah. Folks, I bring you queers for Palestine who wouldn't last very long in Gaza, needless to say. John Schanzer, look, Lisa makes a great point about the Iranian influence operations right here on U.S. soil. College campuses, of course. You've done a lot of great work on this, by the way, at FDD, you and your great team at FDD. But also these assassination plots against President Trump and former Trump administration officials. Could you break that down for us a bit more? What Iran is doing right here on American soil under our noses?
Yeah, look, Lisa makes a great point about what's happening on college campuses. That's an influence operation. We have information operations as well. We know that the Iranians are actually manipulating what we see in Instagram, on X, on Facebook, TikTok, etc. We know that they're trying to influence us in the information space. They have tried to engage in assassination attempts against Trump and Trump administration officials, as well as dissidents here on American soil. Really bold stuff coming out of the regime. We believe that there are probably sleeper cells that are active here in the United States that could be activated if the U.S. were to attack Iran in response to an Israeli and an American attack on Iranian soil. So a lot of things in play here right now. The Iranians have known that this moment would come for quite some time. They have done a lot of planning. It does not happen overnight that you gain influence among some of these useful idiots on college campuses. It takes a long time to create the bots and networks that we see active on social media. They have been ready for this, and certainly they're ready with some of those sleeper cells as well, we believe. And so there's a lot at stake here right now, but the U.S. cannot cower at this moment, right? This is, at the end of the day, this is the U.S.-led world order at stake. It's not just the Middle East. The Russians are watching, the Chinese are watching. They are all waiting to see whether the U.S. has the backbone to stand up to the Iranians. If we can't stand up to them, the weakest link out of the axis of revisionists, then how would we stand up to Russia and China? These are the sorts of things that our enemies are watching and waiting to see how we respond.
Yeah, that Russia-Iran dynamic, guys, very, very dangerous. About a minute left. John, to you first, and you, Lisa. John, how concerned are you about this growing Russia-Iran military alliance?
I'm worried about it. Obviously, we see the Russians buying Iranian weapons and then providing assistance to the Iranians on the world stage. The Chinese would love nothing more than to see two crises at once that might distract from Taiwan. So there's a lot happening here. And again, what we need is a strong U.S. We need to see the U.S. show some backbone here. If we can resolve this one crisis, it'll set us up well for the crises that may come.
Lisa, the Iranian regime, again, leaning on Russia. Strange bedfellows in a sense, but this thing's growing, and it's a dangerous alliance.
Right. The fact that they have found others to lean on, whether it's economically or militarily, is a very dangerous thing. But again, it comes back to, of course, they want to, be themselves. This is the nature of a rogue dictatorship. But why is the U.S. cowering? Why is the U.S. not doing what the U.S. does in its natural form in terms of deterrence, in terms of posturing properly and really, being the leader on the global stage? We've lost that. We've lost that.
Yes, leader of the free world. And we need to get it back, or there's going to be big trouble in the world continuing. Much more after the break. Final thoughts, as a matter of fact, with our dynamic duo, Lisa Daftari and Jonathan Schanzer. Don't move. Welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. We're wrapping up here with our all-star panel, Lisa Daftari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, and Jonathan Schanzer of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. Guys, some final thoughts. John, to you first. One thing we haven't discussed, what's the latest out of Gaza and with Hamas? You've said they're a spent force, or nearly a spent force. Could you elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah, look, obviously, we're going to continue to see some casualties by the IDF inside Gaza as they continue to operate there. And there will be occasional rockets, as we just saw one recently fall near Tel Aviv. But overall, when we look at the state of Hamas, it is in bad shape. They have lost a great number of their leaders. Haniya recently, Mohammed Deif, their top military commander, Marwan Issa, the deputy commander, and a handful of others have been killed. We're watching right now a leadership that is trying to consolidate under Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar, who's trying to lead this effort from tunnels while he's getting tracked by the Israelis. Not a very fortuitous thing for him or for the group. They've lost 3/4 of their fighters. I don't expect Hamas to live that much longer. It doesn't mean that Gaza will be stable, but it could be one less front for the Israelis to be fighting on.
And that is a good thing. But Lisa, at the end of the day, the Iranian regime is the head of the snake here, right?
Absolutely the head of the stake. You should listen to the Iranian people. They've been trying to tell the American administrations for decades now that they want this regime gone. It became more of a popular issue in 2009 because of social media. They called it the Twitter revolution, the Green Revolution. And the people of Iran have been telling us, there's a slogan on the streets, "Na Gaza, na Lebanon, janam fadaya Iran," which means not Gaza, not Lebanon, I only live for Iran, which is a very telling statement. They know that their government is putting their money, the people's money, into their terror projects and not into the people of Iran who are suffering. They come out onto the streets. They get killed for that courage. Women can't show their hair. They can't wear what they want to wear. They can't hold hands with their boyfriend and girlfriend. They can't, even artists. There's a crackdown on anyone who is trying to express themselves and to want freedom.
Lisa, well said. We got to leave it there. Lisa Haftar, Jonathan Schanzer, thank you so much. Tomorrow night, much more coming. Until then, God bless you. We'll see you soon.